Alright, this is for Marco Ross. Alright, so looking at this, the first thing I'm going to say right off the bat is you kind of need to watch your dark values. I think they get way too dark and way too saturated up front. Especially the big eye draws on here are the big eye draws on here are here and here. Um, this pretty much it reads in three equal chunks, and I think that's the biggest issue that I see with this. Um, it's so dark on these areas and the light draw that I'm instinctively drawn more towards the dark areas than I am to the light. So those are things that I would take a look at and start working on. I think you did good on the rule of thirds aspect. Looking at this, I think the rule of thirds is pretty well in there. Just looking at it, you've got your main character here, and that is, the rule of thirds works well with this. However, one of the issues that I think is that it almost becomes a kind of symmetrical look. I mean, you've got big dark mass here and big dark mass here, and the character itself, looking at the character itself, it really doesn't pop as well as I think it should, um, because you've got the atmospheric perspective in that, and it just kind of fades out. So the character doesn't read as well as I think it should. I think a little bit better character would have, or a little bit more darker. So just adding in, your darks here, like so, would have really pushed that character into a little bit more interest. The other thing I think, and I'm not a big photo texture guy. I understand the need for it, but I just always um, I'd rather use brushes and stuff like that, and that's just my interest. But you have creases in where the photo textures are. I see the lines. So looking at this, the first one, I see this one as a line. I see this one as an erased line. I think that this one here is, oops, there we go. This one here is an erased line. Um, so I see these erased lines here, and it feels like very solid. And so you really want to watch how you're erasing these textures, because what's happening is I'm instinctively seeing these lines, and I know that they're photo textures. I mean, like this here, I just feel like it's a cutout, copy paste type of thing. And I think those are aspects that need to really be changed. You need to blend those in a little bit better. The other aspect that I would say is it feels like you want to, I don't know, it feels like there's almost like this waterfall effect. And the problem is I'm really losing the background. The background is way too bright and way too oversaturated. One of the things that I would say is you want to add a little bit more of your darks here to define your mountain range. And even if you're just doing, something like this here, that defines that mountain range a whole lot more. And I think that's something that you really want to pay attention to. And then the other aspect is this whole area is saturated. And I would say in order to adjust that, you really want to create more layers. So I would layer up this background here, and the darks on the, pick a light source. That's it feels like the light source is coming from behind the viewer, and I think that's okay, but the problem is you have everything in light and it's fading out. Whereas if you were to take this and add some more of that saturation in there, um, and then, so like here you've got the darks, so let's add in those darks especially since that's in a foreground aspect. If you add those darks in where that shadow comes, I think that's going to be a little bit more interesting. And then you can put, your big blocks up there, but that starts separating the foreground and background. And I think that's what you need is more layered foreground background elements. Get your light where it should be. So if this shadow is falling on here, put that shadow on there, and give that a sense of kind of proportion, um, where the light source is a consistent thing. And right now it feels like everything is either in the light or it's in the dark. And if that's the case, if you're going and pushing the light, maybe this tree here has a little bit more light on it, and you can kind of add those highlights in there, and then maybe this has the shadow where the tree's sitting in, and it's things like that you want to really think about. Where your light source is coming from, what direction, um, and I think that's going to really push your aspect of layering your background a little bit better. The colors that you have in here are fine, but the problem is, like, here, see, if I put this tonal value here like this, now it looks like that's got a mountainous layer in there, whereas this now is becoming, more sky, and I'm separating background and foreground. So you really want to pay attention to the layers of depth in here, because it goes straight from dark. There's really no middle ground in it, and then you go from no middle ground to pretty much um, a faded white, faded cream color layer. And I think by adding in those highlights and putting in more shadows and things like that, I think it's going to get more dimension to it. So I think layering your stuff a little bit better um, will really push that aspect of what you're going for. All right, I hope that helps.